Hello and welcome to this, our first semi-finals here from Grand Prix Liverpool. The format, Team Unified Modern, and we have two powerhouse teams. One has travelled all the way from Mexico. They're going to be in Barcelona next weekend for the World Magic Cup, and they would absolutely love to be there already with one set of trophies with them. Great team spirit from these guys. They have been working together super well all weekend long, and they are looking to continue their dominance in this format because, you know what, Daniel Becerra, Marcelino Freeman, Dagoberto Silva, they are... Well, they managed to get in fourth place, so they're not going to be on the play here, but they have a lot going for them in this Final Four.
Yep, and well, either vial is one of the best ways to start off with the Banned Spirits deck. Meanwhile, Daniel Becerra, you already saw the deck list very briefly. What Grixis Shadow is trying to do is to leverage some of the best one-mana interactive cards in Modern, ranging from Fatal Push to Lightning Bolt, Thoughtseize, as well as Stubborn Denial. It can answer a lot of the things that the opponent is doing at a rather cheap cost. And it eventually tries to win with big creatures that hopefully only cost 1 black mana in Death Shadow and Gurmag Angler.
So the early Aether Vial came off a Moorland Haunt, just the one coloured land in hand there for Daniel Martinez Querol. He also has Spell Queller, a Path to Exile, and a Mausoleum Wanderer here. It feels to me like if you take the Mausoleum Wanderer, there's really not that much going on from the Spirits deck in the early turns of this game.
Yeah, I think Daniel Martinez Querol already took a mulligan down to 6, so then facing a discard spell is even more hurtful. By taking Mausoleum Wanderer, it means that there aren't going to be any threats in the next couple of turns. There's also no white mana to cast Path to Exile yet, although that Spell Queller can eventually come out of the Aether Vial.
Yeah, Aether Vial, colour fixing as well as everything else here, because I believe that and the Drogskull Captain that just got picked up, that's the way that they're going to be coming into play unless we get some nice lands coming from Querol relatively soon. Another Inquisition of Kozilek here, meaning that full information for Daniel Becerra. He gets to see that Drogskull Captain that got drawn. Path to Exile, Spell Queller, Drogskull Captain, and his hand just getting ripped to shreds here by all of these copies of Inquisition of Kozilek.
Yeah, Becerra also has a Thoughtseize in hand, I believe. So if he also casts that one, he can effectively choose 2 cards out of Daniel Martinez Querol's hand. My first impression would be to just go for both of the spirits, leaving him with a Path to Exile. But I guess Becerra feels like the threat of Martinez Querol drawing into a white source to gain access to the Path to Exile is too much, and he may want to make sure that there is not going to be an efficient answer to any of his big black threats. So Path to Exile, the card taken there.
So Becerra, he gets to work on his life total quite neatly here, just while going about his regular business, activating that Polluted Delta to fetch up presumably, in this case, not one of the tap duels. Basically, lowering his life total a little bit with that, lowering his life total a little bit with the likes of Thoughtseize, meaning that as and when Death Shadow comes along, it can pretty reliably be cast on time, or indeed be super large.
Yeah, but the fact that Becerra searches for a swamp rather than a shock jewel does indicate that he's not currently holding Death Shadow yet.
Finds a Lightning Bolt there off a cycled Street Wraith. And going down to 14 here as he casts Thoughtseize, taking Spell Queller. I like that. Lords on their own, not looking too exciting. And of course, with a Lightning Bolt in hand, he should be able to kill off the first creature that Martinez Querol is able to get into play.
Yeah, this hand is getting just completely demolished. And now Becerra has pretty much free reign to deploy some of his creatures. Ooh.
Now, there is a Death Shadow now, so 14 life, a little bit of an awkward number. Unless there's something wrong on the life totals here.
I'm pretty sure that the life total is currently incorrect, because casting a Death Shadow when you are at 14, that doesn't seem like a plan. My guess is that Becerra is currently at 12. We will get the life totals corrected and updated soon enough.
I mean, there's 2 fetch lands one of which has fetched a Blood Crypt. That's 4 damage. And then there's a Thoughtseize. Where's this other? Oh, and then there was a cycle.
Wraith.
Yeah, so yeah, he's at 12.
So that should add up to 12, yeah.
And that's all fixed now. So we have a 1/1 Death Shadow thus far.
Oh, it is going to get bigger pretty soon, I would reckon.
Look at that, sending a message, a 1/1 Death Shadow just getting stuck in here.
Well, Bechara knows about the Drog School Captain. That could come out via Ether Vial, but it is pretty clear that you're not making this attack without having a way around it. Either, let's say, a Lightning Bolt to deal with the creature, or maybe a Street Wraith to cycle and make the Death Shadow bigger mid-combat. Because of that Street Wraith potential, Daniel Martinez Quirrell also is not interested in going for the blocks.
Double Death Shadow now, and at some point when you have multiple Death Shadows in play, counterintuitive plays like casting Lightning Bolt targeting yourself can sometimes act as pump spells to get ahead in the race.
Alright, another reason for not deploying the Drog School Captain is that you're actually holding another Spell Queller.
Dismember. That a lovely way of making sure that firstly Spell Queller goes away, and secondly now these Death Shadows are truly scary, paying a lot of Phyrexian mana to give -5/-5 to that Spell Queller, and now we have a pair of 5/5s on the battlefield.
You definitely want to do that on your own turn, not give Daniel the opportunity to untap with Ether Vial and then to be able to deploy the Drog School Captain in response.
What a strange game this has been in terms of how Daniel Martinez has been able to deploy things. He's cast a few spells now, but Ether Vial is basically setting up everything that he's got going on, and Becerra has just been able to do everything that he wants in this game.
Yeah, I just moved the advantage bar way over to the left, given that Becerra has Daniel Martinez Quirrell on a 2-turn clock, and still at a healthy enough life total with interactive cards in hand.
So Reflector Mage, kind of the most reliable answer to whichever of the Death Shadows he chose to bounce there.
It is a fine answer that buys a whole lot of time.
And Quirrell just electing to take the other damage. He's at 20, he's got a little bit of breathing room there. We're going to see a follow-up from Becerra. Obviously cannot be the Death Shadow itself, it's going to have to be something else.
I think he's holding Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster Mage, Serum Visions, and, well, the Death Shadow that was just bounced. Lightning Bolt could take out the Reflector Mage if need be. Snapcaster Mage could flashback the Lightning Bolt on the subsequent turn. So those are potential lines that Becerra has access to.
Well, bad news, Bogles fans, because Jose Luis Velasquez with his Storm deck has already won Game 1 in that matchup there. The Spaniard up against Marcelino Freeman has been able to storm off without too much bother by the looks of things. It's a funny kind of a race that you have as a Bogles player against Storm. You just kind of have to get everything together and hope that they're not able to do things, because there's not necessarily tons of interaction available to you, at least in Game 1.
Definitely true. Though this Rattle Chain also suddenly gives Daniel a threat that can raise Becerra. Yeah, maybe we have an actual game on our hands. So remember that there's still a Drug School Captain lurking in Daniel's hand, which was revealed by a discard spell earlier. So
in response to the Rattle Chain's trigger, they're just using the Lightning Bolt to get rid of it before it gains hexproof.
Now the weird thing when playing against Death Shadow is that sometimes they are happy when their life total dwindles. I mean, in a normal matchup you would just be happy to attack with Reflector Mage here. You can still go for it, but there is actually a downside to dealing damage to your opponent. Their Death Shadow is going to grow bigger and bigger.
And there's all sorts of weird situations you can have with sort of first strike and trample over a Death Shadow, where sometimes it survives simply due to the fact that then there's additional damage being dealt through. It's a really, really strange card overall.
Yeah, to explain that potential interaction, if you're blocking with a Death Shadow and both the Death Shadow and your own life total are being damaged mid-combat, then Death Shadow's power toughness updates based on the damage of unblocked or of trample creatures before figuring out whether or not it would die to the combat damage it receives.
Alright, so swings back coming across here from the Death Shadow itself, currently attacking for 8.
Yeah, there's a 2-turn clock.
And potentially, if there's a Teemo Battle Rage, it could be all over right now.
Yeah, but I think Daniel is already in a tough spot. You can't really play around the Teemo Battle Rage anyway.
There we see it, the powerful Ferocious Instant. One of the reasons to still have red in the deck. And here comes the second Death Shadow. It's just such a gigantic creature at this point.
Yeah, and it is possible to cast that at this point because the Reflector Mage entered the battlefield during Bechera's turn on the previous turn. So the can't play it anymore effect has worn off by now.
Well, it's looking very good for the Spanish team. Being on the play, working very nicely for them. In the Croc Clan Ironworks mirror, Daniel Toledo picking up game 1 over Dagoberto Silva. Could this be the exit for the Mexican team here? Drogskull captain being put into play by Daniel Martinez Querol. If there's any game 1s for Mexico to win, this seems like it has to be the one, Frank.
But, well, it's still going to be tough, I'm pretty sure, given that Snapcaster Mage means that there's not going to be any flyers attacking anymore. And even though that Reflector Mage might attack for 3 damage, which is lethal, there are 2 blockers on Daniel's side.
Yeah, hard to imagine with the mulligans and then the discard of Daniel Becerra. It's really tough to imagine this Spirits deck being able to find a way of getting through this.
Yeah, well, the most damage dealt to Becerra was done by himself. Now both of these creatures are lethal, so they require a block, both of them. It's still not over yet. If Ether Vial could put a spirit onto the battlefield and maybe then there's a Lord on the next turn. Daniel has the ability of cobbling together 3 damage. There's also a Moorland Haunt activation that gives him a free 1/1 spirit.
Noble Hierarch, the key linchpin in that, just briefly being around for long enough to make white mana to be able to activate that Moorland Haunt. Another Death Shadow. So, in principle, the door open here for Querol. If he had an end of turn Lord and then something else.
Well, an end of turn, well, basically any creature coming out of the Ether Vial would have been lethal there. But, yeah, didn't come together. Close, but still the Death Shadow player is going to take it down on the next attack.
I mean, I would say that games against Death Shadow often look closer than they are. In the same way that sometimes control decks go to low life, but they've obviously got it locked up with lots of cards in hand, and it can sometimes feel like the games are close when actually the control player is way, way ahead. Sometimes against Death Shadow, you're like, oh, I nearly had you dead. You were at 3. And it's like, well, I nearly had myself dead, and you're actually dead. This is not actually that close at all. So, having had a chance to have a look at Death Shadow, I think that we might be getting a little brief look in on our middle matchup, that being between Marcelino Freeman and Jose Luis Velasquez. So that's Bogles versus Storm. And in game 1, Bogles versus Storm, the Storm deck basically just has free reign to try and go completely crazy. And if it tries, it often succeeds, and that seems to be what happened there. For the matchup post-sideboard, there's the potential for a few cards that make life quite a bit trickier.
Yes, Marcelino Freeman in the sideboard of his Bogles deck has some copies of Rest in Peace. Since the Storm deck is reliant on his graveyard through Past in Flames, that is a way to stop the combo. There's also a Leyline of Sanctity, which could give yourself hexproof. Now, that does stop the potential for a big grape shot, but there only needs to be, say, a single unsubstantiate or repeal somewhere in the Storm player's combo turn to be able to deal with it. So that one,
well, it also stops Gifts Ungiven. Gifts Ungiven is a targeted effect, and it means that actually finding that sideboard card can be a little bit trickier.
But you know what also stops Gifts Ungiven? It's Gadok Teak. Non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or greater can't be played, so that might also be a useful interactive card to add to his deck.
I mean, there's even potential maybe for a card like Nevermore.
Yep, there's one in his sideboard. just to name a card and then that card can't be cast, kind of a meddling mage in enchantment form. All of those cards could give Marcelina Freeman some additional interaction at stopping the Storm combo before it can go off completely.
Now, Glade Clever Scout does come down for Freeman here on turn 1. I mean, I guess that one of the challenges when it comes to playing a Bogle's list after sideboarding in this kind of a matchup is how aggressively do you mulligan towards your sideboarded hate cards? I mean, in a regular game 1 against most decks, you say, I have to keep a hand that has a hexproof creature. If there's no hexproof creature, that's a mulligan. After sideboarding, it gets a little bit more complicated. You might find that you're looking for that ley line, you're looking for the thing that you think is genuinely going to set back the Storm player a lot. Or you might just say, I've got a beatdown hand, maybe I can just get there.
I think the fact that Marcelina gets to be on the play this game means that you can keep reasonably aggressive hands without an interactive card. Now, this is a hand with a hexproof creature, so that's a good start, but no land, no second land, and the only follow-up is another 1/1. This is not the clock you want to have as a Bogles player. Instead, you want to load up this Glade Cover Scout with a bunch of auras like Rancor or Ethereal Armor, not play another Glade Cover Scout. Yeah,
I mean, I would say that in a large proportion of matchups, assuming that there isn't a convenient removal spell for the hexproof creature, a sacrifice effect or similar, you want to draw almost exactly one hexproof creature over the course of the game because one ought to be enough. Here, having 2 of them, not having a land on turn 2, this is not a good draw from the Bogles player.
No, but maybe he does have one of those interactive cards. For example, keeping a hand with Rest in Peace and a couple of random Glade Cover Scouts in the hope of drawing that second land to cast Rest in Peace. That might be a reasonable strategy.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. He does need to draw that land, though. I mean, without the land, essentially, we've not got a game on our hands, but I think that was a Razorverge Thicket picked up. Sorry, Windswept Heath. You know what? That'll work, too.
Good enough. Yep, same deal.
And I believe that now we ought to see what the strength of this hand was, because most of the sideboard cards that are good against this Storm list should be able to be cast for 2 mana. I mean, you've got your enchantments, you've got your Gadok Teague. Leyline of Sanctity obviously would already be in play, but no, this is a core Spirit Walker. It feels to me like we've got an enchantments-based deck that just hasn't got any enchantments going on here, Frank. What's going on?
Well, maybe on the next turn. So Core Spirit Dancer gives you another free card whenever you cast an aura spell. Also grows bigger for every aura attached to it. So maybe Marcelina Freeman is hoping to load up this Core Spirit Dancer with a bunch of Rancors, Ethereal Armors, and what have you on the next turn to present the best possible clock. But wow, maybe Jose Luis might try to combo off on this turn already. It is not easy to combo off on turn 3, especially when you didn't have Baral or Goblin Electromancer on turn 2, but it is not impossible.
We can see here that there's a basic land for each color, and then the face-down card is our Storm Count here.
Mm-hmm.
This is looking pretty good. Once you start casting rituals without having to spend the normal amount of mana on them, that things get very potent indeed. And Manamorphose, in some respects, the best of all the rituals. When it costs 1 mana, you're generating 2 mana, and you're drawing a card, and you're generating a Storm. This is where the Storm deck really gets going.
Yes, indeed. Thanks to that Goblin Electromancer, the potency of all those rituals is improved by a lot. And
Past in Flames with 1 red mana remaining. That means that all of these rituals that are in the graveyard are going to be able to get cast again.
Yep. So that's going to generate a whole bunch of red mana. Then Manamorphose can cycle it into blue mana, which locks or unlocks all those Slate of Hands and card draw spells in the graveyard. So it is not going to be difficult for Jose Luis to sift through his deck. And once he finds a Grape Shot, it is probably going to be pretty much over.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like getting up to a Storm of 20 should be incredibly difficult, but in practice...
in this deck it isn't. No.
Yeah, getting there is not too difficult. I mean, in part because with your Grape Shot, sometimes you'll cast Grape Shot, then flash back your Past in Flames in order to give the Grape Shot that you just cast flashback, and then just play a second Grape Shot. So rather than needing to have a Storm of 20, you could have a Storm of 9 and then a Storm of 10, and that's 19, which would be Marcelino's life total.
Yep, and I think we might actually be seeing that particular line of play. Currently, Jose Luis has 6 mana. He can generate 1 more with Mana Morphos. Oh, he's actually going to cast Grape Shot for, say, 12 damage to Marcelino Freeman, and use Unsubstantiate to return the original copy of Grape Shot to his owner's hand. And then you can just cast it again with the same Storm. That is also a way to, let's say, double up on all the spells you've cast this turn. So, yeah, the Storm player takes it down.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice interaction. It's nice to be able to have Unsubstantiate as both an answer to some of the things that your opponent might have going, and a way to potentially let your Grape Shot go off that much more easily. But now we get a chance to see the Krark Clan Ironworks mirror a little bit here. One side of the battlefield has substantially more foils than the other, and that's the side that has a game win. What are we learning, Frank?
Well, we are... what are we learning here? Well, this is fun and interactive Magic. Well, basically the player who has Krark Clan Ironworks on the battlefield and is currently the active player is usually the one who is winning. But, you know, this Ironworks deck does need to generate some value from its death triggers, most typically via Scrap Trawler. And if you don't have some of them, yeah, you might eventually fizzle, as looks to be the case here for Daniel Toledo.
Now, are there any kind of mirror breaker cards that when you draw them and you're up against another Ironworks player, you ought to be way ahead? Is this that kind of a matchup?
I mean, by and large, there are not a whole lot of interactive cards in this matchup. Maybe after sideboard, you gain access to cards like Negate or Nature's Claim. Those might be useful, but generally, I think the way this matchup plays out is that it's 2 ships passing each other in the night, where both players are trying to combo off as quickly as possible. Another potentially relevant interactive card is the Pyrite Spellbomb. It is an answer to Scrap Trawler, which could matter. But yeah, these are just 2 decks that don't really excel on the interactive spectrum of the game.
Well, it looks like it may have been a prescient choice for Daniel Toledo to play a second copy of Krark Clan Ironworks to the first one there, getting hit by Nature's Claim. The life totals largely irrelevant, I want to say, because if we got Sai going on, then it might be that we see some attacking. But yeah, giving Daniel Toledo an additional 4 life, not so big a deal, because if it works out that a combo goes off, 24 life, 1,000 life, it makes little difference.
Yes, between looping, Mirror Retriever, and Pyrite Spellbomb, the KCI deck is capable of dealing arbitrarily large amounts of damage.
That also the reason that we see Grove of the Burn Willows. It's just not a big deal giving your opponent that life, and having an untapped land that can make red or green very helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes when playing against Death Shadow, giving the opponent life is actually what you want to do.
Buried Ruin there, getting back an Ichor Wellspring. Ichor Wellspring, just on the sly, is a very, very powerful card in this deck. When you've got a Krark Clan Ironworks in play, it's essentially a free divination. You put 2 in initially, but you get that 2 right on back, and you get 2 cards for your trouble.
Yep, and if you have Scrap Trawler next to it, you even get to return something from the graveyard.
I think we got a combo going here, Frank. Can we build a deck?
Yeah, I think we're a bit too late for that, to introduce that to the world. So Daniel is trying to combo off again. Now that Pyrite Spellbomb on the side of Dagoberto Silva may prove relevant as a way to deal with Scrap Trawler if it comes to that.
Chromatic Sphere into Ancient Stirrings. This is how we get it done, and a Scrap Trawler is an option here, but there's a couple of other good options as well. I'll be interested to see exactly how Daniel Toledo plays this one out, because I don't think that he's going to have the mana to do everything that he wants to this turn.
No, well, unless you want to start sacrificing Krark Clan Ironworks, which is generally a bad idea. It seems likely that he's going to pass, or no, I guess he can still play a land and then go into start.
I mean, there's also a Pyrite Spellbomb active on the other side of the battlefield. When you've got your Scrap Trawler, are there ways that you can reasonably play around that?
I mean, you can surely combo off in response to a Pyrite Spellbomb activation, or just let one resolve, and then get it back later with Mirror Retriever. Actually, Daniel had already played the land this turn because he sacrificed the Buried Ruin, I believe. Now, all the way back in Mirrodin block, that's when I believe that Karklan Ironworks was introduced. It was also a combo deck around that time, though one that worked quite different. I think the Karklan Ironworks deck from way back then tried to do things a bit more fairly by just using the Ironworks to accelerate into I think a card like Mere Incubator it was.
Was Mere Incubator that then in turn often turned into a very big fireball.
Yes, pretty much. But that required an investment of something like 12 mana. So the Ironworks was just acting as a turbo ritual in that deck, rather than an engine that set up infinite combos or synergized with Scrap Trawler. Scrap Trawler wasn't even close to having been released back then.
But one thing that was available back then was you could play a full 20 artifact lands.
Oh, yes.
So essentially that deck, in many respects, was more explosive than the modern one, albeit operating on a very different axis.
Oh, I can only imagine what would happen to Modern if the artifact lands were unbanned. This KCI deck would become much more powerful. It's good that we only have Darksteel Citadel to use.
Yeah, as it turns out, artifact lands were pretty good. Pyrite Spellbomb coming along, and it's a cheeky little attack there. That Mere Retriever, his boots, he's too big for them now. He's got to go barefoot, and he's going barefoot all the way over to Daniel Toledo and giving him a bit of a kicking.
It's a 23 turn clock. I like it.
Sometimes you've got to send a message, Frank, and that Mere Retriever, he is all about sending the message. A Tormod's Crypt, the pickup there for Daniel Toledo. That a nice bit of interaction, which is surely a post-sideboard choice. Just a one-of in Daniel Toledo's sideboard, but potentially a pretty big one, assuming that you can navigate the timings of it, because depending on exactly what your opponent has going while they're actually comboing off, it might be very difficult to play around the Tormod's Crypt properly. But if you just play it a little bit early, I mean, potentially could he just snipe that Pyrite Spellbomb right out of the graveyard at some point? That'd do it.
And so for those of you wondering how the KCI infinite combo works, typically you need Karklan Ironworks, Scrap Trawler, and Mirror Retriever on the battlefield. And then you can, the easiest way to explain it would be if you have two Mirror Retrievers, one in play, one in the graveyard, then you can sacrifice one to Karklan Ironworks, generate 2 mana, return the other Mirror Retriever, and basically come back to the same position, except you generate value with Scrap Trawler triggers along the way. You can just loop that and maybe get back a Mox Opal all the time for infinite mana, and then eventually do the same, but then with Pyrite Spellbomb for infinite damage.
So Engineered Explosives being played on 2 here. This is going to be a way of clearing out some of the action that's going on the other side of the battlefield. And combined with Tormod's Crypt, it will mean that potentially we can leave Dagoberta Silva missing a whole host of different elements that he really would want to be able to have to go off with.
Yeah, and pairing the explosives with Tormod's Crypt to make sure that the Mirror Retriever is not going to return anything from the graveyard could also be nice.
Now, I believe that Daniel Toledo's version of the Ironworks combo has exactly 1 Mirror Retriever in it, and these players, I think there's a good chance they'll have a very good idea of what each other are playing with. The lists have gradually sort of merged into one relatively uniform list that's being run now.
Yeah, so quite often the infinite combo uses Mirror Retriever and Scrap Trawler that you tend to sacrifice while paying for mana abilities, and then Scrap Trawler returns Mirror Retriever, Mirror Retriever returns Scrap Trawler, and you just go infinite that way.
Okay, so we've got some action here. There is a Karklan Ironworks being played. In response, Engineered Explosives gets popped. So this is going to destroy everything with a converted mana cost of 2. So Mirror Retriever will trigger, and in response to the trigger, Tormod's Crypt removing graveyards.
Yep, and that was indeed the sole Mirror Retriever in the entire list. meaning that that card is no longer available for Dagoberto Silva this game.
All is not completely lost here. It is still possible for Dagoberto Silva to get up to 23 damage with scrap trawlers and returning things. It's a little bit more complicated.
Yes, or if like he does have a Spine of Ishsa in his list as well, combine that with a couple of scrap trawlers and you can also go infinite.
Yeah, the Spine of Ishsa doing a number of clever things, one of which is just being able to return pretty much anything in the deck with scrap trawler triggers. Worth noting, though, that actual infinite is not quite where it goes, because sooner or later you start running out of targets of things to destroy that you want to destroy. But you can go far enough.
Yeah.
It's...
Well, let me move over the advantage bar a bit more to the left, given that Dagoberto Silva is comboing off over here.
He's trying to.
Yeah, it's by no means a given yet, but he does have Croclan Ironworks and Scrap Trawler. Those are like the two key pieces that you need to go off. There's still a possibility that you might fizzle if you can't really find ways to keep going near the top of your deck. But he definitely holds an advantage looking at the board state.
He is playing on hard mode. Without that Mirror Retriever, his life gets substantially more difficult. It may be that he's just looking to get to a good position right now, such that he can potentially try again next turn, or indeed be in a position of being able to do some amount of disruption on Daniel Toledo's turn if Toledo starts going off. This is a bit of a cat and mouse game we find ourselves in.
At worst, he found, I think, another Nature's Claim to take out the Croclan Ironworks on the other side of the board. So, at worst, for Dagoberto Silva, you are passing the turn with a huge advantage on board, even if you might not be able to win this turn right away.
Darksteel Citadel, the perfect land to have available, because you get to play it, tap it for mana, sacrifice it for 2 more mana. It is an artifact after all. Play a Mind Stone. Mind Stone is a good way of
just drawing a card.
And indeed getting back a 1-drop. In this case, Terrarian.
And Terrarian effectively reads, well, add a colorless mana to your mana pool and draw a card when you have Ironworks on the battlefield.
Yeah, essentially, we're in Storm deck territory right now. In the same way that we were talking about how Manamorphose, when you have a Goblin Electromancer in play, is just sort of value plus. There are a whole bunch of cards that when you have a Croclan Ironworks in play, along with a Scrap Trawler, are value plus 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 plus.
Oh yeah. But those Terrarians are not returning cards of relevance right now.
Yeah, would love to have a Mox open to be able to return so that you can really start generating a lot of mana with every tick down sort of loop that you go through.
Yeah, but what Dagoberto Silva is hoping to draw, well, maybe start with an Ichor Wellspring. That's the free divination that also triggers Scrap Trawler, so that draws even more cards. Maybe more copies of Scrap Trawler to generate more value along the way. Or that you need some kind of payoff card. It could be, depending on how he sideboarded Psy Master Topterist to generate a bunch of Topters, then Nature's Claim the Ironworks and pass with well, a lot of power on the board. It could be that Spine of Ishsa, but I think that can immediately go infinite yet.
Normally when you're going off, there are 2 things that you're looking at. There's cards. Can you continue to draw them? And there's mana.
Yes.
In this instance, Dagoberto Silva is actually a little bit short on both. So him playing this Nature's Claim here says to me he's figured out that he's not going to be able to go off this turn. He's just set up a hand with lots of good cards in. He's got rid of the Ironworks on the other side of things and said, all right, your move. You've got a lot of work to do if you want to go off from here.
Yeah. Had that Mirror Retriever still been here, then almost surely Dagoberto would have been able to combo off and assemble some loops. But yeah, that single Tormod script from Daniel Toledo was key here.
And of course, we know that with the likes of Scrap Trawler and so on, that one Tormod script, it could come back again. And if it comes back, there's the potential that it can wreak more havoc on what it is that Dagobert Silva wants to get going. I mean, once Pyrite Spellbomb is in the graveyard, it is in all sorts of bother, and Nature's Claims on both sides here, meaning that these players just not able to stick their combo nearly as easily as they might like. Inventor's Fair in hand will be pretty good, but you know what? Even better, let's just have more copies of Krark-Clan Ironworks. If that's what you name the deck after, it's probably a good card to draw. We've figured that out. We've got a little system here. This is how we understand what's good and what's bad in this matchup. Turns out, if you name the deck after it, it's good, so be careful with your deck names.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything about affinity at this point. At least the mechanic is there in the deck in spirit. But, Ironworks is back.
Mox Opal into Krark-Clan Ironworks. We said that Mox Opal was going to be important in terms of going off because it's an extra cost that you get back to generate lots of mana. When we talked about going off, the important things are mana and cards. Mana is now almost entirely fine for Dagobert Silva as he's trying to go off. What he needs to find is enough ways of drawing cards. He's got a Terrarian in the graveyard. He's got a Pyrite Spellbomb if he really has to that he can activate to draw cards. He has a Mind Stone to draw cards with. I'm calling it. I think that Dagobert Silva is going to find a way of getting there in this, and it may not be a pretty one, it may not be a beautiful infinite combo, but what it could easily be is just having enough mana and enough triggers of Scrap Trawler to just 14 times throw a Pyrite Spellbomb at his opponent.
That is a viable plan as well. Likely requires at least a second Scrap Trawler to make that work, but it is definitely possible. As you mentioned, indeed, mana is not going to be a big problem anymore now that there's a Mox Opal that will be returned for effectively 3 mana every time a 1 mana artifact goes to the graveyard. But Dagoberto might still be constrained on the cards, right? He still has the Spellbomb on the battlefield.
There's the second
to draw
scrap
deeper
trawler
into his deck.
So now every time an artifact gets sacrificed, there's 2 triggers. So returning 2 Mox Opals here, which is very convenient. Get to use both of them to generate mana. So 6 mana every time any other artifact gets sacrificed.
Yep. So mana is not going to be a problem at all anymore. But cards still might be if he just doesn't find the relevant cards on top. Well, at least by sacrificing a Scrap Trawler, you get 2 Mind Stones. Each Mind Stone can then draw a card. In the process also return, say, a Terrarion, which draws more cards. So every Mind Stone represents, 2 cards drawn.
So dig, dig, dig. No mana left in pool here. Though obviously we know that there's going to be the potential to do a fair amount with Mox Opals if needed.
And I don't think Dagoberto has played a land yet this turn, which could open the potential for a Buried Ruin, which can then return the Scrap Trawler from the graveyard.
Yeah, this is not deterministic yet, but it's certainly looking good for Dagoberto Silva here. I mean, we are getting towards Spine of Ishtar territory, right? He's just found it from an Ancient Stirrings, and I think that this will be the point that he's able to get it all going, because now he has ways of getting back Scrap Trawlers. He's also going to be able to blow up essentially all of Daniel Toledo's permanents at some point.
Yeah, so the way this is going to work is Spine of Ishtar comes down, destroys a permanent on the other side, can then be sacrificed and immediately returns to your hand to generate some mana, also return Scrap Trawler, then you recast the Scrap Trawler, sacrifice some more artifacts, recast the Spine of Ishtar, and then every spine you sacrifice returns a bunch of cards like Mind Stone, Mox Opal, which generate the mana you need to recast it again, so that generates kind of a loop that leaves your opponent with no permanents.
Yeah, and you can probably throw in some of your own Mox Opals there if you need to loop even further. As things stand, though, we're going to get a chance to look in on a deciding game here on the back table between Daniel Becerra on Death Shadow against Daniel Martinez Carol on Spirits. An early Grim Lavamancer ought to be pretty decent here. Plenty of good targets in the Spirits deck, assuming that our old friend Hexproof doesn't have anything to say about that. Between Bogles and Spirits, quite a lot of Hexproof creatures in our semi-final match here between the Mexican national team that we will be seeing at the World Magic Cup of Daniel Becerra, Marcelino Freeman and Dagoberto Silva, and this Spanish team on the other side of our table. One of 3 Spanish teams in our top 4 teams.
Yep, Spain being the language you need to make it to the top 4 here. So looking at this hand, Rest in Peace seems to be a good one to take with Thoughtseize, because if that Rest in Peace is allowed to stick, then Grim Lava Monster won't really do anything anymore. The second Ether Vial, definitely not a threat. The 2 creatures, Noble Hierarch and Spell Queller, well, they are manageable with either Grim Lava Monster or some other removal spells that are generally in the Dead Shadow deck. I do like taking the Rest in Peace here. Not only does it make sure that Grim Lava Monster is still alive, it also keeps Snapcaster Mages relevant. It makes sure that Gurmag Angler may be played for a single black. So one powerful hate card to take away.
We've got a follow-up as well. It is a Serum Vision, so more cards going to the graveyard for Daniel Becerra, gradually setting up what he needs to do with Death Shadow. Also a little bit of card selection, finding the cards that he needs. Serum Vision's just one of those cards that, if you're playing blue, it's got to be on your list to at least consider. I mean, obviously in the Spirits deck, you want to make sure you've got lots of creatures and so on and so forth, but if you're planning on casting spells at all, of the blue spells, Serum Visions is almost omnipresent.
Yeah, it is one of the more powerful cards in Modern if you are digging through your deck looking for specific cards, or just want to get cards into the graveyard.
Foil Flooded Strand there coming down for Daniel Martinez. His mana gradually fixing itself, and of course Ether Vial also helping with the old mana front as well. When you're tapping it, you don't mind what color creature you're putting into play.
Yeah, so the second Vial coming down, meaning that the cards that Becerra still knows are in his opponent's hand are Noble Hierarch, Collected Company and Spell Queller. And, well, that Noble Hierarch could just be shut down by the Grim Lava Monster pretty easily. Maybe Becerra does want to keep up a red mana and the Grim Lava Monster this turn, so that Daniel doesn't have the ability of sneaking in the Hierarch and then casting Collected Company on the next turn.
It looks like Becerra here considering firing off a Thoughtseize. There's a Liliana in hand as well, though, and that's got to be a tempting one as well at some point in this game.
Yeah, it's also good to get that creature out there. Maybe before it can be countered by a Spell Queller or just, well, Planeswalkers. The faster they come down, the better most of the time. But if he would cast Liliana here, it means that if Daniel has a third land, he might be able to sneak in Noble Hierarch here and cast Collected Company on the next turn. That is a downside. But hey, getting a Planeswalker onto the battlefield has been deemed to be good enough.
Yeah, this attack from Grim Lavamancer, it's got no mana to shoot anything down, and Becerra pretty confident that there's not specifically Mausoleum Wanderer in hand that can be flashed in by the Ether Vial, because he's already seen the hand a turn ago. It seems relatively unlikely that he will have drawn into it.
Indeed. So Liliana, the +1 didn't really do much here. There was no creature that Daniel wanted to give -2, -1. But ticking up loyalty is always useful.
Yeah, and generally speaking, they're quite good when it comes to Planeswalkers in R&D, of making sure that whatever the plus ability is, it doesn't require targets, so you're never going to get stuck, in the case of Liliana, for example, of, oh, there are no creatures in play, so I can't gain loyalty. It's up to one target creature gets -2, -1 until the end of turn.
So the big question for me is there going to be a third land? And if so, what will come out of the Collected Company? This is kind of the opportunity that Daniel has, because that Noble Hierarch, it's not going to live for too long, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Liliana would love to snipe a Noble Hierarch. Grim Lavamancer, I think he recognizes the chain of command. In terms of things that are going to kill a Noble Hierarch, it's probably not likely to be him. But Grim Lavamancer 2, of course, could take down the Noble Hierarch, given that there are a few cards in graveyard.
Yep. I think there's also like the potential for Collected Company is also why Daniel did not sacrifice his Flooded Strand yet. at the end of the previous turn. He wanted to just have a larger ratio of lands in his deck to maximize the probability of drawing a land in his draw step. But I don't think he got there. I see 4 spells in hand.
Yep, just passes things back, and Daniel Becerra has every reason to feel pretty happy about that, because things could have come off the rails there a little bit if it worked out that there was a successful collected company.
Yes, suppose there would be collected company finding 2 Drug School captains in the top 6. Then suddenly you have a team that gives each other hexproof, which is tough for that shadow deck to beat.
I like this thought seize here a lot. It kind of forces the action on Martinez Querol to use his Ether Vials in response if he's got creatures that he really wants to keep in play. And ultimately, there are lots of creatures that Becerra might want to kill with his various removal spells. This way around, he gets to make an informed decision.
Well, he knows there's at least a Spell Queller left in Daniel Martinez Querol's hand, which he could cast by just using his lands and Noble Hierarch. No Ether Vial necessary. But if he goes for a deadline, then Daniel could kill the Spell Queller right away with Grim Lava Monster and Liliana together. In which case it will die, unless there is a Rattle Chains or Supreme Phantom coming out of the Ether Vial on 2.
Yeah, this is a tough old spot. Activating Polluted Delta there to fetch up another land. Fetch lands interacting very nicely indeed with Grim Lavamancer, it must be said. A little bit of extra fuel for that fire.
Some of the weird interactions that might happen is that suppose Daniel just passes here, and Becerra passes here, and Martinez Querol at the end of turn activates Ether Vial. Then Becerra could Lightning Bolt the Spell Queller in response, cast Thoughtseize in response to the Ether Vial activation, and actually snipe away the 2-cost creature that Martinez Querol would have in hand at that point.
Yeah, generally speaking, sorceries, of course, can only be played on an empty stack during the main phase. But you know what? Every now and again, something like Spell Queller comes along that messes with that mojo, and there's a good reason why you do not very often see cards that allow any kind of discard being run at anything other than sorcery speed, because very demoralizing having things taken down at instant speed just after you've drawn them without an opportunity to play them.
Alright, well, there is Rattle Chains that tries to give the Spell Queller hexproof, but Lightning Bolt in response means that it's still gonna go down.
Okay, Rattle Chains comes in. There's only one spirit left to give hexproof, and quite frankly, the Rattle Chains didn't need it right that in anyway.
Yeah, now the Noble Hierarch is still alive, so if there's a land on top for Martinez Querol, that collected company can actually be cast.
Looks like no such luck.
Just a Mausoleum Wanderer, not what you want to see on top of your deck if you're the Spirits player.
Yeah, I mean, a really rough one as well, because if you're casting it, you're having to actually tap lands to do so. I mean, who does that in this day and age? It seems a very tiresome thing when there's all of these Ether Vials just mocking you on 2, 3 counters.
Yep. Yeah, this looks pretty good for the Dead Shadow player at this point.
And that's important for Becerra, because his team already one match down. If either Daniel Martinez Querol or Daniel Toledo wins their next game, that's the match. When it comes to Team Unified Modern, 2 out of 3, it's not just not bad, Meatloaf, it's actually very, very good indeed. So a small attack here from that Rattle Chains.
Looks like it's actually going after the life total, not even the Planeswalker. With Becerra already down to a relatively low life, that does seem to be a good way to at least try to win the game.
It sounds like we might need to switch across to our other match, because there appears to be some Scrap Trawler beatdown going on, and that Scrap Trawler beatdown could prove decisive in our overall match here, because if Daniel Toledo is able to win this game, then that will be all she wrote. But now there's a Scrap Trawler on the other side of things alongside a Krark Clan Ironworks. Could it be? Well, it looks like there's Ica Wellstring and a Mirror Retriever. Is Dagobert Silva going to be able to fully go off here?
Well, I didn't actually touch the advantage bar yet, but I do think it is pointing in the right direction here. Scrap Trawler beatdown, a really funny way to try to win the game, but comboing off with Karklan Ironworks and Scrap Trawler, and already having like a bunch of card draw artifacts, it does look to be quite good for Dagoberto Silva here. I think I also see a Mere Retriever in his hand. So this is getting very close to being able to set up a loop. Yeah, and I believe this is a loop where you can activate the Chromatic Star. Then by paying for it,
well, we should jump back to our other match very, very quickly indeed, if that's the case, because
we should.
Daniel Becerra was looking in very good shape with his Death Shadow list to potentially be able to take this game, and now that Dagoberto Silva has won his match against Daniel Toledo, it could be Mexico. It could be that even though Marcelino Freeman's Bogle's list pretty much just fell over to Storm, that was not the important match and that the Mexicans can simply win the other two. The live totals 5-15, but do not read that as being a strong advantage for the Spirits deck, because right now Daniel Martinez Querol, he's light on lands, and there's a lot of removal just sat on the battlefield for Daniel Becerra between Grim Lavamancer and that Liliana Last Hope.
Yeah, they're just gutting down all the spirits one by one. And that collected company not going to be cast anytime soon, not just with 2 lands.
Okay, so here's Mausoleum Wanderer. Becerra looks at his hand, he tries to figure out how best to deploy his various removal. He's got to be thinking about every single other spirit that's going on here. I don't believe that he's got enough information about what is in Querol's hand at this point. He uses Grim Lavamancer to take down Rattle Chains.
Yeah, I think when he's seeing the Mausoleum Wanderer, he's thinking, well, I can beat that.
A Path to Exile to pick up there for Martinez Querol. That will be enough to deal with Grim Lavamancer. But there's still that Planeswalker in play. Liliana the Last Hope. Going to be a problematic one.
For sure. Still, I think the best plan that Martinez Querol has available to him is just to attack with the Mausoleum Wanderer to Becerra's life total. Interestingly, with the Path to Exile, you mentioned just pathing the Grim Lavamancer. That's kind of the obvious play, right? The opponent has a creature that's annoying for you. Just get it out of here, kill it. But given that Martinez Querol holds Collected Company in hand and is looking for mana to be able to cast it, there may be some merit to using Path to Exile on your own Mausoleum Wanderer. I mean, it's gonna die to Liliana anyway, and maybe you'd rather have a third land than to kill the opposing Grim Lavamancer.
This is a very interesting line, and I'm intrigued to see whether or not it's one that the Spanish team elects to go with. A rough spot may warrant some slightly unorthodox play in order to get there. I mean, I guess that one big question is, what is actually required from this Spanish team to win this game? It's not just about sort of staving off the loss, and it might well be that the correct answer is hitting a good Collected Company.
I think that is one of the better ways to try to win the game, indeed. Like hoping that there are some hexproof creatures on the top of your deck. On the other hand, if that Grim...
I like it.
Yep. Path to Exile your own creature. Just get that land onto the table, and you do have to do it in your own turn, because if you wait until your opponent's turn, wait until the Liliana activation, then that Grim Lavamancer would shoot down the Mausoleum Wanderer in response, thereby counter the Path to Exile due to a lack of legal targets. Yeah, this is, I think, the way to win the game. Just hope that Becerra does not have another discard spell or some counter magic for the Collected Company. Then hope that you hit like
double Dog Skull. I think that's got to be the gold standard.
That would be perfect. But even a single Geist of Saint Draft might already be enough.
Yeah, Dagoberto Silva on 4 life.
Perhaps do Supreme Phantoms. That would also represent a flying force with a lot of toughness. So yeah, I like the play.
This is playing for the win as opposed to just trying to stall the game out a little longer. Not a play that everyone would have seen. Here we have Liliana ticking up to the point where her ultimate is perilously close.
Well, and when you have 3 eyes on the same, or 3 pairs of eyes on the same game from your own team, it's easy to see it. Well, there's the 4th land.
Yeah, I mean, the damage that comes from Horizon Canopy, not a big deal for Daniel Martinez-Carroll just yet. He's got plenty of life to work with.
This is going to be an exciting collected company. It's all going to come down to that.
Serum Visions, because of course, if Daniel Becerra just draws into a Stubborn Denial, he doesn't need to have a big creature in play for it to be enough to stop a collected company right now. And I don't really know that Daniel Martinez-Carroll can hang about on his collected company too much in the hope that there's not going to be a Stubborn Denial on the other side.
There might have been some merit to casting collected company on your own turn, so as to not give the opponent more draw steps to find some answers to it. But you'd rather not give Daniel an opportunity to use Liliana on any of the fresh spirits that might enter the battlefield. Better to just cast collected company at the end of the turn.
Yeah, at the end of turn, there's the potential that you just find enough power to be able to swing in for the win immediately. That is the hope of the whole of this Spanish team. They want to meet their countrymen in the finals. 2 Spanish teams elsewhere in our semi-finals here.
Meanwhile, Liliana could actually go ultimate. You know, -7 gives you the emblem that produces a bunch of black zombie creatures at the end of your turn. Now, that's not going to help in staving off flying spirits, but it might be a sweet way to close out the game, assuming that this collected company is going to be disappointing.
Took a good while to resolve that Serum Vision. It was not a trivial decision, and now going for the minus ability on Liliana the Last Hope, putting 2 cards in the graveyard, looking for a creature, finds a Death Shadow.
Also pretty good, and it does fuel the Grim Lava Monster, giving some cards in the graveyard as food for its activated ability.
So this will be a 9/9 Death Shadow, really changing up the clock on how this game's going to go.
Yeah, but none of these creatures have flying. The big power of the Spirits deck is that most of its creatures do have that keyword. So it doesn't matter how big these Death Shadows are. If there are some flying spirits coming out of the collected company, they could just soar over for the win.
All right. As Daniel Becerra goes to pass the turn, it seems likely that we're going to see a 4-mana instant. They're just double checking whether or not Becerra has played a land yet this turn. A lot of eyes on this game between the 2 teams of 3.
So it looks like Death Shadow is still on the stack, and maybe they want to respond with Collected Company in case there's a Spell Queller in the top 6.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, Liliana already got activated, so it's not like there's the minus ability, or that is the minus toughness on a creature ability available anymore this turn. Alright.
Here we go.
Go double Drug School Captain. Double Supreme Phantom. Just any 2 spirits might be good enough.
That's a land. That's a land. There's a Reflector Mage. There's a Mausoleum Wanderer. There's another Collected Company. And there is a Rattle Chains. Now,
well, it's better than nothing, but could have been much better.
I mean, I guess if you take Mausoleum Wanderer and Rattle Chains...
Yeah, but then Grim
one's
Lava
going to die to
Monster...
Grim Lavamancer,
Yeah.
and...
Yeah, this is actually a pretty disappointing Collected Company, because the flyers can be pinged down by the Grim Lava Monster. At least Reflector Mage has enough toughness to survive a Grim Lava Monster ping. But you had really been hoping for higher toughness spirits, hexproof creatures. None of those in the top 6.
So Reflector Mage bounces that Death Shadow. It will not be coming back in the next turn or so.
Well, it can still be cast on Bechera's next turn.
Yes. Okay. What was that pickup?
I guess Collected Company into double Noble Hierarch could prove lethal, but that's
cool.
That's a stretch.
So Reflector Mage swinging in here.
Yeah, drawing a card with Horizon Canopy.
We're okay with that.
Or
seems like maybe Team Spain aren't. They realize
just making sure that you tap the right mana for it. Actually, if you were gonna do this, might have been better to do it pre-combat in case you draw a Noble Hierarch, which you could then play for an additional point of damage. But that's a minor thing. So are there going to be some more spirits? I mean, those Ether Vials could represent anything, and with Bechera at 2 life,
yeah,
like a Supreme Phantom, or even a Spell Queller, Drug School Captain. Well, I guess not the Drug School Captain. That can be shut down by the Grim Lava Monster. Guys of Saint Draft would be a good one to have. And yeah, you never know what comes out of these vials.
Okay, so Liliana ticking up means that Reflector Mage will not be a potent attacker next turn, just a 0-2. And there is the Death Shadow.
Yep. Can be cast because the Reflector Mage ability has worn off once Martina Squirrel took his own turn.
Yeah, it can get a little strange when Reflector Mage gets put into play off Collected Company at strange times in turns, but we have successfully worked our way through that one.
Yep.
Chat, I'm looking at you. We figured it out. Okay. What are we vialing in? It's a Supreme Phantom.
Alright. Not lethal yet, but I mean, 2-turn clock is also decent. Although then Grim Lava Monster plus Liliana could shoot it down on the next turn. If there's another Supreme Phantom or a Drug School Captain, might be lethal. I guess not the Captain, because that still gets shut down by the Grim Lava Monster.
Just cast a Collected Company and get 2 Lords.
That would be a good one.
For an exclamation point finish on this semi-finals.
Phantasmal Image also wouldn't do it, because it just gets pinged by the Grim Lava Monster.
So, Grim Lava Monster gets to shoot Reflector Mage here.
Wait, Reflector Mage?
Reflector Mage had been shrunk by Liliana.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
Does mean there's no more cards in the graveyard, and at just 1 life, that Scalding Tarn no longer worth worrying about. It can just sit around in play now, looking pretty. It does look very pretty, so you know.
And now effectively this Death Shadow is lethal. Attacking as a 12-12 plus the 2 damage from Grim Lava Monster.
Well, we need 2 more cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, but you have Liliana can do that, yeah.
Is it a must in terms of if you find a creature when you put cards in the graveyard?
Good question. No, you may return a creature card. So yeah, I think Martina Squirrel better find a blocker here. Ideally, I guess a Reflector Mage. Otherwise, yeah, this is going to be lethal thanks to the Grim Lava Monster.
Tap Ether Vial. Is it the tap and the cheeky hand? No, we have a creature. We have a Spell Queller. There's a Fatal Push in hand, but there's no Revolt.
There's no way to get Revolt, right? There's no fetch land
nope.
anymore.
Yeah, the fetch land is a dead card because there's just 1 life.
But at least the Fatal Push can then take out the Supreme Phantom, leaving Martina Squirrel without an ability to attack for lethal on the next turn. So
this
still looking
incredibly close.
Still looking good for the Mexican WMC team.
Could not be closer.
I mean, winning at 1 life, that's... I mean, it is something that Shadow decks tend to do a lot, but still.
And if you know that you're going to be casting Fatal Push on the Supreme Phantom, you might as well pick up that Gurmag Angler, right?
Maybe. I think he has another Gurmag Angler in hand, and they get worse in multiples. Indeed, it is you may return, so you don't have to return the Angler.
I guess that when you've got Grim Lavamancer hanging around, your Gomag Anglers are going to cost a fortune.
Yeah,
you have to make a choice. It's one or the other, really.
And Grimmark Angler is also not going to shave many turns off the clock. So I think you'd rather have cards in your graveyard as fuel for the Grim Lavamancer. And this is still a very tough spot for Martinez Quirrell. He'd better find Collected Company on the top. Because otherwise any creature is just going to act as a jump blocker for the Death Shadow. Unless it's Reflector Mage, I guess.
So here we have Gomag Angler getting cast, leaving one card in the graveyard, meaning that Grim Lavamancer not active for a number of reasons right now. Okay, what's it to be?
Is it a Collected Company? That would be huge. Otherwise, if it's just any creature, it already needs to be 3 toughness or more to even survive the Grim Lavamancer. Then all it's doing is just chump blocking the Death Shadow.
So we're basically saying it needs to be...
Well, Reflector Mage would be
Reflector Mage
decent.
Or the Lord has 3 toughness as well, though that one a little worse as it opens up a few other options. Thought Scour, great draw for Becerra. His life getting made a lot easier here as he gets more fuel for the Grim Lavamancer. Potentially he can get back that Death Shadow with Liliana, meaning that he has even more lethal threats on the battlefield.
Yeah, then it will be really difficult for Martinez Quirrell to get out of this.
Yeah, I mean, the Abyss essentially already in play.
It seems
on
to be
Becerra's side of things.
It's almost a good Collected Company or bust.
Settle the wreckage!
Oh, didn't see that one coming.
I would venture to suggest that Daniel Becerra might not have seen that one coming either, though. The fact that he's got Liliana might mean that he's going to be able to get out of this.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been brought in from the sideboard. Sweet.
I would love to have seen the look on, firstly, Daniel Martinez Quirrell's face when he drew that Settle the Wreckage and knew that he was going to have to LSV his way through. But then also the look on Becerra's face at the point that it got cast, because that was the perfect answer.
Wow. Yeah, we were talking about Collected Company as a 4-mana instant, but Settle is definitely even better. Not a card you typically see in every Banned Spirits deck. But wow, did it do a lot of work.
I mean, we say it did a lot of work. It bought him another turn.
Yes.
As it turns out, when you've got Liliana to get back a Death Shadow, when you've got yet another Gomag Angler, there are quite a lot of ways that you can find to win the game, and we are fast running out of ways for Daniel Martinez Quirrell to not lose the game. Okay,
maybe another Settle the Wreckage off the top.
I mean, how many is he running? It can't be that many, surely. Are we going to have to replace the notion of the Miser's one-of to be the LSV one-of, at least specifically when we're talking about Settle the Wreckage? I mean, that seems reasonable, right? Big attacks coming through here. An activation of Ether Vial.
I'm just seeing one Settle the Wreckage in the sideboard.
Selfless Spirit. I don't think this is going to be good enough, as Grim Lavamancer can shoot the Selfless Spirit down. And there's the handshake, and with that, it is Mexico making its way through to the very finals of Grand Prix Liverpool. The World Magic Cup team, they're going to be competing in Barcelona in just 1 week from now. That show will be starting on Friday, but they still have another show to win here. It will be the team from Mexico heading across to the final. Fantastic play there. Yep. Very, very back and forth. Considering how things started on that match between Spirits and Death Shadow, it seemed like it was almost a foregone conclusion. When we moved away from it to see how the Krark Clan Iron match was going to finish, it felt like it could be minutes, it could be seconds until that one ended. They fought their way through, though. It took a little while, but wow, Mexico have got there, and we're going to have a chance to see them in the finals. This is incredible stuff, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. The Spanish team did their best by making sweet plays like Path to Exile on your own creature to get close to the Collected Company mana, and had everyone sweating like, how good is the Collected Company going to be?
It could have been a winning Collected Company.
Oh, yes. It ultimately was mediocre, and the Death Shadow deck winning at just 1 life. It was close.
It was as close as they come, and we're going to get a chance to see just one more match of Magic from Liverpool. That match is going to be your final. There's going to be a Raf, there's going to be a Riley, there's going to be 6 Spanish speakers in our final. Do not go anywhere. It's going to be right up after these messages.